Hi guys, and welcome back to the channel today. So this is the second Cosworth block. This is on the one that we stripped down, showed you in the last video. I'm on the third bore here to put liners in this one. Still haven't got the liners yet, but I have got the pistons all done with the valve cutouts. You can see them sitting there. Oh yes, we have got the liners. Sorry, I'm telling a lie. Here they are. So yeah, these are at the stage, once we do a little dummy build, once the crank's in the block and all done, just got to take a little bit off the top of these to get them down to 12 thou protrusion, and we can crack on with that engine. Right, so the Golf. Now this is the Golf that I said to you last video that I'm going to be doing a video on today. So it's the Golf GTI on a 66 plate, and this has got the 2 litre tfsi engine, bit like the Golf R engine really. So tell you from the beginning, sorry about the noise, John's got his crank grinder going. You can't just stop the wheel on that, you have to let it keep spinning, so that's what the racket is, but hopefully you can hear me. From the word go, the guys rang me up and said that they've got a bit of a knock-in, sounds a little bit like piston slap. They've had the sump off at a garage, can see a sort of load of swarf in there. They didn't want to go any further, so can we sort it? Now this is a classic scenario of the vehicle is worth 22,000 quid. It's a very nice car with only about 50,000 mile on the clock, something like that. And he reckons it's worth about 10 with a blown engine. So you've got about 12,000 quid to play with. If it's going to cost around that, it swings and roundabouts whether you can be bothered really, if you've got the money to sort of outlay. But then again, I spoke to him and he sort of said that he would quite like to get it done and keep it himself, you know. But anyway, the problem, he sort of said he had a slight rattle at top on the top end. I said they are a bit renowned with the injectors sort of failing and either wiping a piston or cracking a piston or something like that. I said the Golf R that we had in, I did a video on it last year, that had the same thing. So I said at this point he wants us to pick the car up, he wants us to investigate, so just take the engine out of it. It's a lot easier to work on with your motor out, take the head off and see what we can find. So that's exactly what we did. Couldn't really see anything with the head off, apart from one little alarming thing. Now people don't really think about this, but on top of one of the pistons, you can see there you've got like a light spot on the edge of the piston, and you've got 2 little light spots here. Now to someone that was just looking down on top of the block once the head was off, they probably wouldn't think too much of that, but what that is where the piston has been touching the cylinder head. And usually the reason for that is, from our experience, is when a big end has gone that bad, it's allowing the piston to come up so much further that it's touching the cylinder head, because obviously it's a very close fit anyway really. The only thickness difference is the head gasket. So usually that is what's happened when you see these light marks. We then went on to strip the engine, and so this is the engine that I got Isaac involved with. He stripped it out, and here it is lying in bits. So first of all we look at the crank, and sure enough it has done an end on that one. At this stage, unlikely when it's done an end that bad that the piston's been hitting the head that it's salvageable. So I'm assuming at this stage that we're going to need a new crank at worst. But on further investigation, and this is the worst news guys, you see down there, now the centre is where the thrust is. Now for any of you guys that don't know what a thrust is, I'm sure many of you do, but the thrust bearings sit in either side of the block. Sometimes you have them just in the cap, sometimes you have them just in the block, and other times you have 4 thrust washers that go in the cap and the block. If I find you a thrust washer, so the reason I can't find a thrust washer on this guys is because we haven't really got any decent ones. So you've got the main bearing here that sits in the housing, then either side of that you've got a thrust washer. Now this one has not got any in the cap, it's only got 2 in the block, but this is what is left of the thrust washers. See that? That is not good news. So what the thrust does is it sits in here. You've got thrust faces either side of the crank, and it just stops the crank from having excess float either way, which is obviously going to affect the clutch and cause knocking. So it basically is just it just allows the crank to sit where it's got to sit and do its job. But what's happened on here is it's obviously had a bit of an oil starvation issue. From where it stems, we don't know, but we do know that the oil pump has failed because it's seized, basically. So the chain's just jumped. Whether that was the cause of this, or that's a sort of product of, you know, of what's happened here, I don't know at this stage. But basically, you see that side, so that's where the thrust sits in the block there. That's how it's meant to look. You can see basically when the crank's in, the thrust's got nowhere to go. You usually run about sort of 3 to 5 thou of end float on this. But if you see on this side, where you've got that little sort of square lip there where the thrust sits in, this side you haven't got it. So basically what's happened is it chewed into the side of the block. Even if that face was okay, you couldn't put a thrust in there because it would just come out the bottom. So it's completely mullered the block, and unfortunately this is not an easy engine to try and get short motors, especially not at the minute the way things are. The tfsi and what have you, they vary so much on the different blocks and crank setups and that we can't find a crank, we can't find a block, and we can't find a new short motor. So at this stage I rang him up and I said, look, it's not good news. The best thing you can do here, we're going to work a price out for him. He said that although he's not happy about it, if it's sort of costing about 10 grand to do, then it's going to be almost worth doing. I said, well, obviously we're going to have a bit of labour here for us stripping this down. The car is over at Clover Cars. We've subbed that out, so they took the motor out, stripped off the ancillary. So what I've said to Tim over at Clover is get us a sort of estimate on what it's going to cost to finish. There's a bit of labour here for us stripping the engine. I've been in touch with Volkswagen, and they've got one in stock, a new engine. So it's a tall engine, bare, but with timing gear and all that stuff on it. And it's 5,800 quid plus the VAT. So it's going to be close, but this is maybe worth doing, you know. And he said the thing is, I did intend on selling it, but if it's all been done and it's been done properly, he's probably going to have the 2-year warranty on the new engine from Volkswagen. So, and it's a lovely car, you know. So if we can try and sort of get it done for around that money, I think he may go ahead. It's going to be touch and go. Because as I say, you're looking at nearly 6 grand plus the VAT, so what, over 7,000 quid for the engine with the VAT. So it's going to be touch and go. But once Tim gets back to us with an estimate, we can soon see. So yeah, real shame. It's very unlike one of these to do that. Usually it's a piston issue. He's very unlucky, and what the cause is as of yet, I do not know. So yeah, not good news, guys. So as you can see, guys, Isaac has finished the Cosworth cylinder head. So this is the one with the solid lifters. Looked like a real laborious job, but he's managed to get it all right, bless him. So the next step for this engine now is to go to the bottom end, which we have here. So this is the one we've got the crank in. We've got the pistons here. The rods have turned up. So this is a long rod, what they call a short piston setup, WRC setup. So the idea of the long rod, the longer the rod, the less lateral swing on the rod. You get less lateral force. So better for high revving, high power applications. Anyway, now we've got the rods, what we're going to do is get a bearing into the rod. We're going to put a piston on the rod, sort of all loosely. Don't need any circlips or anything in the gudgeon pins. We're going to slap it down the hole, and we're going to see what the jut out is compared to the block face. Then what we're going to do is obviously machine the top. Basically with this crown, existing crown as it is now, with the volume in the cylinder head, we are looking at around 9:1 compression ratio, which is exactly what we want. We may have to take about 10 thou off these pistons, and then it should be good. So we'll take 10 thou off the top of the piston, maybe 10 thou out of this bowl, and then we're going to be good for about 9-1. Anyway, once I've done that, these pistons are going to go back to the owner of the engine. Now, the reason for that is that the owner does plating of various types. He does ceramic coating, and he also does Teflon coating. And what he wants to do with these pistons, and you've probably seen this from other channels on YouTube, various engine builders, they do it in America. I actually watched a video the other day, and the guy was building a Toyota Supra engine, and he has some very fancy looking pistons in there. And what they do is they seem to ceramic coat the tops of the pistons, and they obviously put the Teflon coating on the skirts, which you do see a lot of modern pistons have anyway, but it's the ceramic coating on the top of the pistons really. So he wants to do that, he wants to put them in his engine, so we're going to keep you updated on that product and see what good it does, and whether it's successful or not. And it could be a service that we offer in the future for not that much more, to be honest. So yeah, be really interested. Pretty trick. So yeah, see how it goes. Right guys, just before we go today, I'm just going to be showing you one thing that we may be talking about in our next video. The old van in the background there, unfortunately coming to the end of its life. Had a good innings, we've had that from new actually, and it's V-Reg, bear in mind. So what, 22 years old, something like that. But unfortunately, when John and I bought the place, nearly 6 years ago, we decided to keep the old van on. We don't want to rush out and start spending unnecessary money that we don't have to spend. But we are getting a few knocks and rattles. Every MOT, they sort of advise us on other things. So it's really getting to the end of its life now, guys. So if you remember, not that long ago, I did a video on electric vehicles. So I've been umming and ahhing about this now for a year or two. I think an electric van at this stage for us, I'm not too sure about, because obviously in the last year we've started to have a lot more stuff from Nationwide. So the whole point of a van for us, we don't do so much local stuff, but we may need it to take the trailer to pick vehicles up, to deliver vehicles back, things like that. And I think at this stage, with the infrastructure and that not being up to scratch maybe, I don't think electric's the way forward for us. But I have been looking at diesel vans. I specifically like something with a crew cab in the back. I have been looking at trucks, but trucks to me, neither one thing or the other. I think a van would be far more beneficial for us. So I have looked at various different vans, and also I've spoke with my accountant, and at the moment, I think till next March, you've got a really good deal on the corporation tax being, I think it's 130% deductible on vans. Obviously then you've got your VAT and what have you to sort of take off that. So you start looking into it and it's really tempting. So yeah, going to start looking at vans. Have eyed a van up at the moment, so I'm going to show you that van in the next video. But yeah, put some comments down below, guys, on what you think we should do, really. As I say, we don't want to go out and just sort of waste a load of money on something you're not going to get, that's not really tax deductible or anything. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on that, guys. Well, until next time, guys, like, subscribe, comment down below, and we'll see you in another one. Cheers.